Ladies and gentlemen, may we introduce the Harristocrats. Wet paint. How shabby and uninteresting our surroundings would be if nothing ever got a coat of paint. But all the time, painters are busy making things clean and fresh, providing things with protection against sun and rain, or giving things a colourful new look. And all these industrious people will tell you that even with the finest quality paint, they can only get a good finish if they use paintbrushes which keep their shape, hold plenty of paint, and spread it evenly without leaving brush marks. In other words, they soon discover that it always pays to use only good paintbrushes, such as those which come from our brushworks at Stoke Prior near Bromsgrove in the heart of England, one of the largest paintbrush factories in the world. Here in the olden days, the wild pig used to roam through the great forest of Feckenham, and here once again, pig bristles and trees are brought together in this modern factory, surrounded by tree plantations and playing fields, covering an area of some 15,000 square yards. It's grown from a business which began in 1928 with 6 employees in a tiny backstreet workshop in Birmingham. A few years later, it moved to the old mill at Stoke Prior, close to the site of the present factory. Now we employ over 600 people. You may wonder why making such small and apparently simple objects as paintbrushes needs such a large organization. But we make 23,000 of them every day, and this involves a great many processes and operations. Moreover, we believe a factory should be a pleasant place to work in, as it's a place where people have to live for 40 hours each week, and there must be space for social activities and recreation. These men and girls are certainly enjoying their lunch hour break. Many of them like working here so much that they often tell their young brothers and sisters or friends to come along and see whether we can give them a job. This creates quite a family spirit about the place and makes cooperation between management and work people easy. But even when you've got friends working at the place, applying for a new job's always a bit of an ordeal, and this young lady naturally doesn't feel quite sure of herself. But our receptionist will do her best to see that she doesn't have to wait long before she gets an interview. Very soon she'll be finding out that our personnel director's not nearly as alarming a person as she'd imagined. He's used to putting people at their ease, asks her about her home and her hobbies and what she's been doing since she left school. Then he'll tell her about the sort of jobs we shall want her to learn. In our works handbook, she'll find details of working hours and factory rules and many other matters of interest to employees. Holidays with pay, sick pay, profit-sharing scheme, marriage gifts, family allowances, long service bonuses, pension scheme. Many of these things will, of course, not be of interest to this young lady until she's much older. All that she's bothered about now is whether she'll like her job. Her foreman's here to see that she starts off right. She's probably imagined a factory to be a rather dingy, dirty place, but she'll come into a bright, clean workshop with machines and walls painted in light colors. Everyone seems to be cheerful at their work, and the newcomer will soon get to know her workmates and learn her new job, quite a simple one at first. Starting work in a factory is rather an abrupt change for some of our youngest employees who've come to us straight from school. So to make the change more gradual, all our under-18s go 1 day a week to the Bromsgrove College of Further Education. This girl's chosen domestic science as one of her subjects. Cake making's a pleasant change from brush making, and it'll be useful when she comes to get married. It's fascinating to put a knitting needle into a cake you've just made to see whether it's done, but not so fascinating to sit all day putting rivets into cardboard boxes. We can't make all the jobs in our factory interesting in themselves, but we do encourage all our work people to take an interest in the life of the firm. Under the Leslie Harris Trust, the employees own 1/5 of the company's ordinary shares. This gives them a direct interest in the firm's prosperity. Every employee can have a say in the running of the factory by belonging to one of the discussion groups. This typical agenda shows the sort of matters that are discussed, from grumbles about tea to suggestions about factory layout. Each group has 20 members and elects its own chairman, and 2 directors attend to answer questions and to try and find a practical way of solving the problems. But this is talking shop. Once a year, our arts festivals give everyone an opportunity for wider interests. During this week, visitors to our works find a sculpture by Henry Moore dominating our entrance hall. The committee room becomes a picture gallery. The boardroom houses a display of fine craftsmanship. This cultural orgy takes place once a year, but every week our conference room becomes a lunch-hour cinema, and we try to get films that are worth seeing. On other days, we hold record concerts ranging from symphony to syncopation. When these entertaining events are not happening, the conference room is used as a restroom by girls who want somewhere quiet to sit during their lunch hour. The men find games the best relaxation, and their recreation room is the scene of many midday contests. But whichever way they choose to aid digestion, they've all had a good lunch. The canteen is large enough for parties and dances. The lunches are large enough to suit the appetites of everyone. Some say the English always grumble about their food. Not when our chef has done the job. He knows what they like, and judging from the empty plates, they like what he knows. You can't enjoy eating, however, if your teeth are troubling you. The dentist pays regular visits to the factory during working hours, saving our work people long journeys and hours of waiting in surgeries. At the other end of the body, a blister or corn can be very trying when you have to be on your feet most of the day. The chiropodist comes every other week, but our nurse is always available to deal with minor ills and accidents and make routine checkups. If you're troubled about your weight, there's nothing like some outdoor exercise to tone you up after a day in the factory. There are 4 hard tennis courts for the energetic, but there are other people who prefer to take their sport quietly, and for them, there's a canal close by where they can occasionally catch a fish. Those who love team games can play hockey or football or cricket, according to the season. Our players have many hard-fought matches against Worcestershire teams, a county famous for its cricketers. Hazard! There's a perfect view of the playing fields from the windows of our general office, but these exciting matches don't take place during working hours, or the office staff would never get any work done. And with office work, you must keep your mind on the job, however much you may be helped by modern equipment. Up-to-date methods have taken away much of the irritating drudgery from office work, but the more intelligent jobs have still to be done by the staff, and the firm cannot prosper unless these are done accurately and efficiently. Pleasant, sunny surroundings help to make their work much more enjoyable. There are equally attractive rooms for other departments on the same floor. In these quiet surroundings, it's hard to remember that the noisy, bustling factory is only a few yards away. But as we come down from the offices, this large photograph reminds us that the lifeblood of the whole organization is the manufacture of paintbrushes. And in the entrance hall, we come back to the beginning of all our efforts. An ugly-looking beast, but he grows the finest bristles. Trees, a forest of potential paintbrush handles. All around the factory, we have tree plantations and nurseries. Plastics might give us a lot less trouble, but wood is stronger and it feels right and weighs right. Our forestry manager knows all about growing the right sorts of trees for paintbrush handles.
Lots of hardwoods are suitable, but we mostly use ash or beech, alder or sycamore. This sycamore seed has been collected from specially good parent trees, ones that are straight and sound. We hope the seedlings will follow their parents' good example. About 9 months later, the sycamore seeds have grown into a healthy-looking lot of seedlings. But life in the seed beds become a bit crowded, so we lift them to another part of our nursery, and there we put them in rows about 9 inches apart, leaving about 3 inches between each tree. For the next year and a half, we leave them to grow. But we have to do a bit of hoeing or they get choked with weeds. This noisy contraption's clearing shrub from old woodland. It'll do as much work in one day as 20 men. It breaks up the undergrowth into small pieces that'll rot down into good humus and make the ground fertile. Old woodland that's been cleared like this is perfect for growing young trees. So we bring them from the nursery when they're about 2 years old and plant them 1,750 or so to an acre. This will be their permanent home, and the undergrowth will give them shade whilst they're growing. Of course, we have to do a bit of clearing from time to time, or the young ones will get lost. They're not so easy to see even when you know where they are. So if you go for a walk in woods like these, please have a care where you put your feet. The trees will make their own shade as they grow taller, and the lower branches will drop off. And we lop off some of the higher side branches so as knots won't form in the timber. Because they're close together, the trees will go straight as they reach for their share of the light from the sky. But when they're about 15 years old, we have to cut down perhaps 1 in 5, give the others room to get a bit of girth, grow at the right speed to make sound, evenly grained timber. Forest is a long-winded job, and it'll be another 20 or 30 years before such trees are of any use to our factory. Here's a fine specimen of the type of tree we want. Felling trees leaves great gaps in the landscape, but our foresters plant thousands of young trees every year, making new woods, like this one of ours near the Severn Valley, where we've got trees in many different stages of growth. It's good to feel that in thinking of our future needs, we're restocking the countryside with fine English hardwood timber.
The logs arrive at our factory sawn to about 7-foot lengths. We can store about 1,000 tons of logs in our timber yard, but we like to keep stocks much lower than this, as they deteriorate rapidly if left in the open for long. So within a few days, they're going into the sawmill. Twelve 5-foot-long saw blades, such as this one, are needed to cut the log into planks of suitable thicknesses. The saw blades are mounted side by side in a frame, and the logs are driven through the frame saw by hydraulic power. Fingers and limbs are kept well out of harm's way, but although the handling is mechanized, the machine is by no means automatic, and feeding the logs through needs experience and good judgment. We can saw 100 tons of logs on this one machine every day. The planks are taken to the timber shed, where they're stacked on pallets with spacing strips so that air can circulate freely around each plank. They're then taken to the drying kilns. Newly felled wood contains as much as half its own weight in water. 3/4 of this water must be dried out before the wood is suitable for handle manufacture. It used to take up to 2 years to season such timber by natural drying. Now, these electronically controlled kilns will do the job much more accurately in 14 days. The drying speed must be slow at first, so various dials indicate the exact temperature of the inside of each kiln and the amount of humidity present at any moment. We make sample tests from each batch at various times during the drying process. The meter shows that this plank now contains only 12% of water and that seasoning is complete. The planks are hot as they come from the kilns and must be allowed to cool off slowly in the open air. By the time they're delivered to the handle shop, they're in perfect condition for machining. This multiple edging saw cuts the planks into strips of convenient width for handle making. They're then cut again into rectangular blocks or blanks of the right length. Here we're making T-shaped blanks for 3-inch brushes. The offcuts can be used for smaller brush handles. All the blanks are inspected to make sure that they're free from knots or bad discoloration. Unusable wood and the bark and sawdust help to provide fuel to heat the factory. The square-cut blanks now go through a sequence of 4 planing operations known as spindle molding. they come from the last machine, they've been transformed into shapely handles, but they're somewhat lacking in finish. So after a test, to make sure that they're the correct size, they go through sanding machines which smooth away all the rough edges. Each handle is given a hole in the shoulder so that the brush may be hung up for drying or storage. And as we are proud of our products, this is where the paintbrush with a name to its handle is christened. Juniors, handles are one of our cheaper brushes, but we allow no social distinctions to influence us. All are individually inspected, and only those that are worthy go forward to the dipping tanks to receive their finishing coats. First, they're regimented onto trays so that they can be handled in batches and all receive the same treatment. Each batch is first given 2 coats of clear cellulose. This is a lengthy process as a dip takes 10 minutes, and then the lacquer must be allowed to harden for 24 hours before the handles are dipped a second time. Dipping can only be successful if the viscosity of the lacquer is right. In plain English, it mustn't be too thick or too thin. Every consignment of lacquer is tested in our works laboratory by timing how long it takes a measured amount to drain through a nozzle of particular size. The rate of flow depends on the temperature. And when this is known, the viscosity of the lacquer can be adjusted so that it will coat each handle evenly without leaving drip marks. Each type of paintbrush can be easily recognized by its distinctive color. Here are 3 of our principal lines. The handles are now complete and ready for marriage to the appropriate brush heads, and these metal rings will seal their union. They're called ferrules, and we make them from nickel-plated steel strip which has been highly polished. This automatic machine can make 30,000 ferrules a day. Normal speed, slow motion. To give extra strength to our larger sized ferrules, the seam is soldered. The solder is melted by high-frequency radiation, which concentrates the heat where it's needed and allows the ferrule to be held with the bare hand. Ferrules for distemper brushes are made of copper, which won't rust when used with waterfalls. The ferrule is an integral part of the brush head, making a strong, firm foundation for the bristles. Many of the bristles we use come from countries with cold climates, where the pigs grow thick coats to keep warm. The North Indian pig grows long, grey bristles. The Chinese wild pig favors black ones, equally sleek and strong. Softer and shorter bristles come from the carcasses of English pigs. This fantastic machine at an English bacon factory removes all the bristles from a carcass in a matter of 30 seconds, leaving it practically clean-shaven. The bristles are collected by a conveyor, which stacks them conveniently. From the bacon factory, we bring the bristles to large drying grounds behind our works, where they're laid out to mature. A few weeks later, they're ready for processing, and the first job is to wash them thoroughly. These tanks have an action rather like a domestic washing machine. The bristles are freed from dirt and grease by continual agitation. After a further cleansing operation, they're fed into a tank, and this ingenious machine deposits them neatly onto a conveyor belt. A rotary comb distributes the bristles evenly at right angles to the belt. The bristles have still got a natural curl, and in order to straighten them, they're fed from the conveyor belt onto a rotating rod and bound onto it lengthwise. The rods of bristles are first boiled and then go into a drying oven. After 24 hours, they're removed for unwinding. The bristles have now lost their curl and are clean and dry and ready for sorting. All natural bristles have flagged tips. That is to say, the bristles divide into a number of fine hairs. This is what makes them ideal for paintbrushes, as they're both soft and resilient. The flagged end can hold plenty of paint and spread it smoothly without leaving brush marks. The root ends will be much too stiff and hard. Our first job, therefore, is to sort the bristles so that they all lie the same way round. This sounds difficult, but as bristles are much thicker at the root end than at the tip, an oscillating bar resting lightly on them will gradually push the thicker ends outwards, separating the bristles into two rows. Next, they must be sorted for length. They're placed in a tray with all the root ends on a level. The tips of the longer bristles stick out further than the shorter ones, and so are the first to be gripped by the roller as the tray travels forward. Each pan now contains bristles of a particular length, all lying with their tips in one direction. Imported bristles, such as these from China, have already been through similar processes, and we receive them bundled in graded sizes. They still need further treatment as they're dry and somewhat curly, not yet straight enough for brush making, so we pack them tightly into metal cones. The trays of coned bristles are placed in cages and immersed in large tanks of boiling water. The heat and moisture makes the bristles sweet and supple, and after 6 hours of this treatment, it's only necessary to dry out the surface moisture, and they'll be in the right condition for making into brushes. Now, we make paintbrushes for a variety of different purposes, and many brushes need a mixture of different types of bristles to give them the right characteristics. Here's one of our mixing machines, blending black Chinese bristle with a softer, lighter colored variety. The bristles make several journeys through the machine, and each time the mixing is more complete. This batch is now thoroughly mixed and ready for forming into paintbrush heads. Small brushes are assembled on an automatic machine. This one can turn out one brush head every 2 seconds, loading in ferrules, feeding in the bristles, picking up a measured quantity of bristle, inserting the bristle into the ferrules, and so on until the brush heads are complete and ready for rubber sealing. Now that won't have shown you much of what takes place, so let's have a look at how our larger brushes are made. When you buy one of our paint brushes, the quantity and length of bristle is the main price factor. Here we're weighing out long Chinese bristle for one of our highest grade professional brushes, the 3-inch Super. All our bigger brushes are handmade, and this needs very skilled fingers. The great art is to get all the bristles lying smoothly and evenly side by side as they're placed in the temporary ferrule. Formica wedges are inserted to provide a clamping grip and to make the outer layers of bristle slope inwards when the ferrule's finally fixed in position. At this stage, the bristles are all at the same level, and the brush head needs to be given an arched shape. This could be achieved by trimming or cutting. In fact, this is the normal method, but it removes most of the fine flag tips we showed you earlier. We have a much better method. We form the bristles into an arch. Here's the base of the brush head in its temporary ferrule. Our brushes retain all the natural softness and paint-holding qualities of the bristles. The arch shape allows the maximum number of bristles to touch the surface at whatever angle the brush is held. It also allows the width of the stroke to be controlled. There's a lot of drag on the bristles as they pass over the sticky paint. They're firmly anchored so that they won't come out. The first step is to coat the base of the bristles with a thick rubber solution. The level of the liquid is slowly raised to a depth of about ½ an inch, and the brush heads remain here for an hour and a half to give the rubber solution time to penetrate. If we examine one of these brush heads after the rubber's been partially dried out, we shall find that the base of each bristle has received an even coat of rubber and is bonded to all its neighbors. Although the rubber is still pliable, the brush head will now keep its shape when the temporary ferrule is removed. The bristles make a tight fit inside the permanent ferrule when it's adjusted to the correct position with gauges. It then gets a vigorous combing to remove all loose hairs and fluff. Having come together, the brush heads and ferrules must never again be parted. This rubber compound molds itself into the ferrule and the bristle roots. All that's necessary now is to make the rubber hard and solid. But first, the bristles must be given a hairdo with warm linseed to set them in shape during the heat treatment. (325 Fahrenheit, 163 centigrade, is the temperature of the steam-heated hot plates on which the brush heads stand during the vulcanizing process. Here the rubber will slowly harden, bonding itself to the ferrules and getting an immovable grip on each bristle. It will change to a reddish-brown color, and at the end of 7 hours, the bristles will have become permanently sealed in a tough, almost indestructible substance that is resistant to chemical action and unaffected by heat or damp. Now that the bristles have had a hairdo and heat set, we give them a really hard grooming. Why this tough treatment is known as flirting, we wouldn't know. But the idea is to get rid of any dried linseed or fluff or loose hairs, and this certainly does the job thoroughly. But we haven't finished with them yet. Moths enjoy bristles, and as a paintbrush with moth holes is not much use to anyone, we give all ours a soaking in DDT solution as a preventative. A spin dryer completes the process. At last, the brush heads are finished. Each one is inspected before the handle is fitted. These are super brushes, but our gaily colored juniors receive exactly similar treatment. The handle is pushed up into the ferrule. They are a very tight fit, but we secure them with steel pins to make certain they'll never separate. Meanwhile, the super brushes are having a final polish, and then a final inspection to make sure that they really are as good as we think they are. We've taken a lot of trouble over our brushes, so we wrap each one by hand. This is one of those neat operations that always fascinates visitors to our works. Careful packing makes sure that our customers will receive the brushes as clean and well groomed as when they left the factory. The brushes are now ready to go out into the world to start their working life, but they may need help from some of our other products if they're to do the job properly. Putty knives, pointing trowels, shave hooks, scrapers, paint strippers, 5 different sizes in our super quality, all are made in our factory. Our painter's tools and our paint brushes find a large market abroad and are advertised in many languages. One of our directors is in charge of exports, and it's his duty to welcome overseas buyers to our factory and to show them our latest lines. He often finds that duty turns out to be a real pleasure. In addition to our export trade, we have 3 overseas factories making for their home markets. Our factory in South Africa employs 50 men and women. Besides paintbrushes, they also make many other types of brush, for which there's a large market in this part of the world, such as bottle cleaners and brooms.
Hier is ons bezig om bottelborstels te maken. Die borstels is in een spiraalvorm tussen dik draad op een automatische machine ingewerkt. Hulle is daarna op een andere machine geplaatst en in specifieke lengtes gesnijd. Ons maakt verschillende besems. Hedy Naturel is bezig om stijve borstels in een besem in te plaatsen.
Mountains and lakes and wide open spaces. When you're over here on holiday, you'll know we Irish are proud of our darling countryside and our cities. But we're also proud of what we make. And here in Dublin, we've got our own paintbrush factory. It's not as large as the English place for sure, but our brushes surely are fine brushes, and we send them in cratefuls all over the country. Hard work like this deserves a drop of something good. And at Gillis's brewery, the maintenance chefs deserve something good when they've got a spot of painting to do. They know what two can do when they're using our paintbrushes.
Now we'll fly to Portugal, where our brushes are made by a Portuguese firm with equipment and raw materials supplied by us.
Arris no mundo. Na sua crescente expansão, as famosas trinchas Arris são agora fabricadas em Portugal. Rufino Alves Ribeiro e Filhos têm muita honra em garantir o mesmo elevado nível técnico e alto padrão de qualidade que constituem o legítimo orgulho de L.G. Harris & Co. Limited, de Stockfriars, Inglaterra.
Never mind what language they paint in. From the largest and most expensive to the smallest and cheapest, the answer is always a good paintbrush. Chosen by the industrial painter, because he must have brushes that will stand up to years of hard wear on 101 different tasks. Chosen by the professional house decorator, who must satisfy his clients by doing a first-class job as quickly as possible. Chosen by the housewife, who hasn't done much painting before and wants a brush that's easy to use. But whether you're an expert or a learner, we believe that now you've seen something of their careful upbringing, you'll easily be able to recognize true Harristocrats at sight, whatever their particular shape or size. Take them by the hand, ladies and gentlemen. They're ready to do all kinds of jobs, and they're longing to get their bristles into a pot of paint. And as they go out into the world, we come to the end of this tour, hoping that you found it interesting to visit the home of the Harristocrats, and hoping that in their company you'll have many hours of carefree and colorful enjoyment.